This is the I Love Success podcast. I'm Jumrukovski, and I have made a vow to myself to help as many people as possible to achieve their dreams. Let's get started. Hey everybody, it's Jumrukovski with the I Love Success podcast. I just finished recording this amazing episode with Reuben Canada, the founder of Jin+Ja. Jin+Ja is an amazing beverage that I think you will really love, and his story is incredible. He was a patent attorney and he didn't like that much, so then he decided to create his own beverage. Now he has a very cool company. We talked about ayahuasca, traveling to Peru, starting a business, creating the life, and don't worrying anymore. So I think you're gonna love this episode. So relax, kick back, and enjoy, guys. Welcome, Reuben.
Thanks.
That's quite the introduction.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
And that was the short one, right?
Yeah, that was a short version. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's always so fun to sit down here with people like you who've done a lot in their life and just talk and discuss and share ideas. So the first question I want to talk to you about is who you really are as a person, just to get a little bit of introduction of who you are.
Got it. Who am I? I'm a kind person, compassionate, very thoughtful. I spend a lot of time doing introspection because I think that processing what happens every day is where that real wisdom comes from. So I think it really helps to wake up early because getting a jump on the day, that's the gift that I give myself. I think that's a part of that's a defining part of me, is waking up extremely early.
And what's extremely early for you?
Well, for me, 4:30. Yeah, that's I think that's one of those things that has been consistent over my life. I'd have to say that's a part of who I am, and I think of that as my me time until about 7:30. So you can actually think through all the stuff that you want while you're doing really monotonous stuff like, tidying up or sweeping your deck. But it's all the stuff that you really wouldn't do if you're waking up at 7 o'clock, just starting the day with the rest of the world. I'm very curious. Most of the time when there are challenges, one of the ways that I deal with them is always asking, well, what if we could figure out a way to deal with this? The bigger the better. Just because, you have the opportunity to deal with small problems or big problems. Like, do you want your world to be small or big? And why not deal with the big ones? And what I found is when you actually do take on big problems or big challenges, the small ones just have a way of working themselves out, So it's like you're choosing what level that you want to work at. And I think when you do that, there's a lot of opportunities to contribute to the success of others.
No, I really like everything that you're saying now, because I'm actually working on a book with morning routines. And it's based on the people that I meet on the podcast, and why do successful people wake up early? And it's funny, like 90% of the people that I met here on this podcast that are highly successful in their field, they wake up early because they want that me time. They want to contemplate, they want to think, they might want to work out, meditate. So this was actually a later question, but let's talk about it now. So
yeah, sure.
What do you do in your mornings?
So it started out, the most recent evolution of it started out when I first moved here. I'd wake up actually a little bit early, around 4 o'clock, and I'd look at the clock and say to myself, what can I do for the next hour while Home Depot is opening up? Because I've just go to Home Depot and get seeds to, plant a little garden and just find things to make a harmonious environment, because I find that that's what works really well for me, is when everything has its place. And I'm not. Things do get out of place, but if you put that pin in it and say, I'm going to come back and make sure that some order is bought here, that's enough. But just knowing that everything has this sort of energy and movement that aligns with creating that higher energy state for creativity and also focus, then that's so it started out as that. So I'd wake up, and when I first got back from the Amazon, I would wake up in the morning and I'd have some basil infused water by the bed, and I'd pour myself a glass of water and then go out on my deck and turn on the deck light and read some philosophy book or read the Bible. And one of the first books that I read was Seneca, Letters to a Stoic Philosopher. And then I'd read chapters in the Bible. So I'd be like, all right, if I can read the Bible, I'll read 2 chapters, in the morning. So after it was, that's actually evolved into meditation now, but it's the same sort of, contemplative process of you're starting your day off with something that's gonna give you some sort of tangible, emotional, spiritual, psychological focus. And it doesn't really matter what it is, but it's just one of those, you're setting your day. And then after that, I usually make up my bed. I think I saw in a TED Talk or read somewhere that how you make up your bed will set the tone for your day. So I pay attention to making up my bed.
That's good.
And then I'll usually go downstairs, make a cup of coffee, watch Vice News, and then, the CNN clips on Apple TV. And while I'm doing that, I'll start checking emails, make a smoothie, and then get to whatever projects that I've set for the day. And because most of my business is on the East Coast, usually 2:30 is like when the phone calls stop coming and the emails kind of die down. So, I'll spend maybe the next 2 or 3 hours, puttering around with, different stuff that, just admin stuff, or, if there's any sort of things that I want to get started with other people so that it's ready for them the next day, that's what I'll do. But what I find is that it's not some 8 to 12 hour a day experience that I'm having right now, but maybe 5 to 6 now, maybe 4 to 6, just because those first couple of hours you're setting the day up. So a lot of the things that I do now is more strategy, just because the machine is built, and until we're ready to really do a significant expansion, it's about optimizing and refining. And those are the kind of problems that it's not
you can't stress it. Yeah, you have to be able to think and give yourself a solution, right? To be solution driven. I love that you're giving yourself time, because a lot of people are just running around and they say, I'm not successful, but I'm so busy.
Yeah.
Sometimes maybe you're too busy, right? And I think we're going to talk about that more when we're going to share the journey, why you started Jin+Ja and all of that. But I liked also what you said, I decided to have the big problems. Why not have those? And I love that, because I thought the same thing. Why am I doing something just to play small? Because if I want to do something, why not go big and try? What's the worst thing that can happen? That I end up in the same position like
exactly.
I am now.
It's always waiting for you. Yeah, it's not like it's going anywhere.
Yeah, so that's cool. And you talked about being in Amazon, right? Why did you do that?
Yeah, so I think it was, I went to visit some friends up in San Francisco, and one of my classmates from college, he said, I think you should go to this retreat in the Amazon. It's an ayahuasca retreat.
Yeah.
And, I went right after I got married, and it was a terrific experience. And, you should really think about it. So I was like, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I didn't actually book anything then. I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, a friend of mine said, let's go on a hike. And it was a waterfall at the end of the hike. So we're sitting there, and I'm thinking like, all right, there's kids climbing this thing. It's slightly dangerous, and she was thinking the same thing too. She said, do you want to go jump off? And I was like, yes. I just ran up the rocks, and this kid, and he's like, do you want me to go first? And I said, that's not going to get me down there any sooner. And jumping into the waterfall was like that catalyst to get things started. So I go to Peru, and then the retreat was in a secondary rainforest, so it's right outside of Iquitos. And Iquitos you can only get to by airplane. It's totally inaccessible by land travel, and it's right on the edge of the Amazon. So about a 45-minute boat ride and a little rickshaw. I don't even know what you call them, a little motorized.
Yeah.
They're not exactly motorcycles, not exactly cars. But yeah, so we get to the retreat, and it was 10 days, and it was 4 ceremonies, and I think it was one of those. It was a very enlightened, life refining experiences. I mean, I think that life changing that's a good term, but I think that it can get more specific into you get to deal with a lot of the stuff that you spend a lot of time throughout the day letting your ego push away, but it's the sort of stuff that it robs you on a daily basis of your fulfillment, and not going into those dark corners of your life. It just means that there's certain housekeeping that you can't even do.
Yeah.
So it gave access to that, and it made a much more concrete spiritual and emotional experience that I could have, because you're getting so much in touch with yourself. You actually know what and what not to trust.
So just to people that don't know what ayahuasca is, can you just talk what is the actual process and what happens to you when you do that?
Yeah, so ayahuasca, it's something that, it's a vine that grows in the Amazon, and the tribes in the Amazon, I guess a couple of thousand years ago, they figured out that if you mix this vine with a certain leaf, that you actually create this really, really potent psychoactive medicine. And these shamans down there, they administer it. And the place that I went, the shamans train for 8 years before they can administer, and it's a ritual, and it happens at night, and it happens in this big wooden temple, and they have a couple of candles burning, and the ayahuasca it's a liquid, and it's a really strong, it's a strong tasting liquid too. Everybody that I've talked to that has experienced it, they always talk about the taste of the liquid. So the first time that I tasted, I was like, this isn't that bad. It's actually got like a little smoky aftertaste to it, it's bitter, but I could take that. And then they have these different songs for different phases of the ritual. So they start singing, and they have these leaves that they shake, and I think they're called Icaros leaves. And so they're singing, and the first time it was this pressure that just felt like it was building in the front of my head, and there you just go. It's almost like warp speed. You're going into yourself, and part of it is this physical and spiritual purging. So I think within like maybe 10 minutes of me drinking this liquid, I had to throw up. I was
I heard that a lot of people throw up when they do it.
Yeah, and they're like, this isn't a bad thing, and I wasn't trying to stop it, but it was like, it felt like so much was coming out, and I was looking at the people that were there with me, and wasn't so much, and I just got the feeling that, considering the journey that I was on, there was so much that I had to push down. I wasn't disappointed at all that there was so much coming up. Because on the flip side, after that happened, then you start the emotional and spiritual purging, and you start to, for me, the first time, part of it was almost taking a tour through all the memories that I've had and interactions that I've had with people that I've really been disappointed, with myself enough to the point that I would try and rationalize my actions, but to actually sit there with the volume on your ego turned down really low, so it's not like you can defend yourself. You're just sitting there, and you have this experience of not knowing what to do with it, because a lot of times I think that we think that we can solve ourselves out of the mistakes that we make, but sometimes there is nothing to do but to accept it, and to make yourself a promise that there is a different way that you're going to engage with people. But then it went into this journey through time of just the history of mankind, and just how so much misunderstanding has led to such really tragic results. And it's almost like that first misunderstanding where two people don't speak the same language, have the same customs. It's so easy for somebody to do something that triggers a defense mechanism in another person, and before you know it, you've got like a physically violent interaction. And that's it. Just, I was seeing that through time, and seeing the sort of pain, but then also seeing that as a species, we are very much connected with each other, connected to the point that you could actually wholeheartedly, with all seriousness, look at any person and see that they're as connected to you as your foot. So if your foot is screaming at you in pain, are you gonna cut it off? You're not. You're gonna be, very gentle and compassionate for your foot because you feel it. But it's a conscious effort. It's a conscious choice to actually leave yourself open and vulnerable enough to feel connected with other people, however they show up, even when it's not in the best state. But once you understand that they're doing the best they can, and it's not like whatever pain that they're trying to share with you, and that it's personal, like it's not personal. This is something this is the best that they can do, and seeing that as an opportunity to show some compassion, because you never know what sort of an impact it's going to have on somebody.
Yeah. So you went really deep.
Oh yeah, that was just day one.
Yeah, oh, crazy. So would you recommend other people to take ayahuasca and do this experience?
I would. The likelihood of anybody doing it is relatively slim, just because it's a pretty significant experience, because people, everybody who was there were by themselves. So you got to keep in mind, you're traveling to the jungle. This is the Amazon. There are still jaguars that are popping up. All the kids would walk to school, they got their machetes. And I'm like, why they got the machetes? It's like, jaguars coming, they'll try and grab a little kid. But then it's also, you're doing something that is so absolutely foreign to, the conditioning that we grew up with, doctors and pills. We grew up in an environment where the solution comes in this very, very safe looking bottle, or you go into a relatively sterile or refined office and you're talking to this person. So like our connection with the even possibility that there's something in the jungle that's going to help me in any sort of way, it's almost like we've lost the connection between these drugs that were synthesized came from this place, but this is the real stuff here. And it's not just physical. There's also one of the challenges that I think that we have with mental health in America is that we're intellectualizing it, and it's not that. There's like spiritual traumas that have to be addressed.
I think you have to be open to it too, to take that step and be open. You probably read a lot, you're probably a very spiritual being, you probably meditated a lot, or to get to this stage and actually want to do it, right?
Yeah, to be open to it. I think that, you've actually, that's 100% right on, is being open to it.
Because I know a lot of people that talks about doing this experience, but there's very few that I think you're the first one I met that actually have done it and actually going to Peru and really doing that. So that's a big step. Did you do it because you felt like you had stuff that you want to work on that you couldn't get solved in this Western society that we live in today?
Yeah, I didn't see. That's exactly why I did it. Actually, I was seeing a life coach, and he was like, "Reuben, you're having a spiritual awakening," and I was like, "Is that another word for spiritual crisis?" Because I just don't have anything to really. I'm not connected with what I'm doing anymore. Yeah. I spent a healthy amount of time putting some distance between me and my company because, my life coach is right. He's like, you have a very unhealthy relationship with your company. You have alerts on your phone that tell you every time that someone purchases your product. You're looking at your phone all the time because it's just buzzing all the time. Yeah. It's like, that's not healthy. Like, you should have a life separate unto this company and an identity separate unto it. And when I did that, something very healthy happened, but it opened up a space that I hadn't really considered, which is, who am I outside of this thing that I made? Because before that, I was a lawyer. My identity was tied to something tangible, and the level of dissatisfaction that I experienced from not having that tangible identity, it was hard. I didn't know what else to do. So.
It's crazy, and I want to talk more about this because success. What is really success? Okay, that's the hard part. And I meet so many people that have financial success, or maybe they have a law degree, they work as a lawyer just like you, or they have this business, but who am I as a person? Am I successful spiritually, mentally, physically? And having all those things together, it's so freaking difficult. But I want to learn that. I want to have a fulfilled life. It's not all about having the best business, or you want to have good relationships. You want to feel good with yourself, and you want to find some type of balance in your life. But how do we do that? And how do we get out of that, looking at our emails, looking at our orders all the time?
Yeah.
It's,
I totally, that was some of the interesting stuff that came out of going down into the Amazon was, I stopped worrying altogether about tomorrow. I mean, the only thing that was there when I would think about stuff that was future related was everything leading up to this was meant to be. If you could follow a thread from early in life that led up to this moment, and if you think about it, some of the experiences you've had, these things were meant to happen like two meteors in space traveling for 1 million years were meant to collide. Like the sort of timing that was involved in every step of the way, like all the choices that you made. And, that started to give me some insight on what was going to happen in the future, which was in these moments that were significant, the part that I played in them was showing up. And a lot of the success in my company, it wasn't things that I planned for at all. When I first started, you first start with a plan. And as my marketing chief says, he says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Yeah. And then you start to learn the nature of fate, which is, had I not shown up at this place at this time, whatever was supposed to happen in order to move things forward to the next day would not have happened. Yeah. And these are significant things that were like totally unrelated to this gnawing feeling of, I don't know if what I'm going to do is going to work out tomorrow. Like that was of so little substance or so little significance in the things that really moved the needle. Yeah. The stuff that moved the needle was, there was this moment in time, and it's almost like you come to those nexus points, and you've got two choices of either to orbit around the edges and avoid it, or step into it. And stepping into it, that's the beauty of how wide open the future is. I'm like, I want this little thing, but finally understanding that there's so much more that is waiting, as long as I don't get so transfixed on this little itty bitty thing that I'm looking for as my goal. Like it's insignificant, and it's also one of those, it actually answers a statement that I'm going to say in a second, but it's very little fulfillment in that, which is pretty counterintuitive to the idea of I get fulfillment out of achieving my goals. That's just the.
So you're saying that's not true?
No, I no, I don't think that's true at all.
But what is fulfillment then?
I think that when you have, I think fulfillment is the beauty of that unknown of tomorrow, leaving that unknown, and then that's where you find yourself, which is, this is who I am in a situation where I'm totally off balance, but this is where I find out. It's not a routine where I'm on cruise control, where it's like rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. I got to this level. There's a saying that if you follow any path precisely to its end, you will arrive exactly nowhere. And it's the reason why you don't climb to the top of the mountain. You climb the mountain enough to determine it's a mountain, but no more. Because if you climb to the top of the mountain, you're exactly nowhere. You can't even see the mountain. You don't even know the mountain exists. And that's the thing about it is that, you set a path, and then along the way, what everybody finds is this path evolves. And just like water, which is something that you have to be adaptable, is that where you set out for is not where you really are going to end up if you really are playing this game right. It's going to be something that is totally evolved. Like, a simple example is a guy wanted to start a record label, and now he's got TV stations, and it's, his success is much more, it's wildly expanded beyond this transfixed goal of rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. I'm just going to stay in this narrow way of existing with, this specific goal. Like, goals change and they have to evolve, because the person that you were when you set a goal is not going to be the person that you are tomorrow. And there's a saying, I think it's a Hebrew saying, which is to judge a man by who he was yesterday is not to see who he is right now. It's really unfortunate when we do it to ourselves, when we say, I set this goal, and even though it feels less and less gratifying because my desires have evolved, or the significance of this, you start a business and there's this financial, there's this, appearance thing. There's a lot of things going on, but as the business grows and evolves, your perception of what's important changes. Like, for me, I'd never really felt a lot of satisfaction out of, any of those tangible accolades, like, first in class and real property, or, winning a football game, or this or that. You have those momentary spikes, but it's not like you can look back on that and say, it didn't give me the same satisfaction as when I finally completed everything about the first rendition of Jin+Ja, which is I picked the color of the cap, designed the label with a graphic designer. Like, she gave me 10 different designs, and it's basically like colors on a palette. I pulled out different things from each one. I was like, that's it. And then
that was the moment that felt.
Yeah, that was actually like one of the most gratifying moments that I can remember, because me doing something for an assignment, what are you talking about here? We're talking about me and 20 other people are doing the same thing, and we're going to be judged according to someone determining who they think did it the best. So it's, all right, I'm competing with somebody else. That's not really the satisfaction that you gain from just creating something that wasn't there.
I get it. And like a couple of weeks ago, I met with a motivational speaker, Sean Stevenson. He's amazing. And he met a guy, his friend, that loved music, but he was so down on his luck and his life. And Sean asked him, do you do this for fame and fortune? He said, no. And Sean said, but you act like it. You act like you're already doing music. You're already producing music. Do you think it's going to change just because you're a bigger name? You make more money? Yes, in the beginning. But at the end of the day, if you don't enjoy it now, you're not going to enjoy it later either. So I think that process of creating something, sometimes we forget. I was a world medalist in karate.
Yeah.
And some of my best moments was not the competitions. It was at the training, or when I lost, and like I felt that I was alive. It was so much pain. I was like, how can I go back? Okay, the victories are fun, but at the end of the day, that is just some pieces of metal that I have in a box somewhere. No one can take away the moments, or evolving myself as a human being, or creating something just like you did. And we were having a really deep conversation really early, because I love that you come across, and you are that deep person. I didn't know that, because we don't know each other. This is actually the first conversation. We spoke on the phone 10-15 minutes, and already then I noticed that, like, okay, this guy is a deep person, and the reason I wanted you was for this, which I love.
He's gonna bring me some more product. That's what it's gonna be about.
But now when we're talking, this is really interesting stuff, and most people think about these things, but they don't go for it like you have done. So, but let's talk a little bit about Jin+Ja. We're gonna go deep again, because I want to know, why does a patent lawyer, right? Patent lawyer decide to start a beverage company in his kitchen? And this is 2009, right?
Yeah, this is 2009. That's when it.
So what happened? You go into your work in a suit every day, patent lawyer, and like all of a sudden, I'm gonna start this beverage company. You must have been sad at that time.
Yeah, I was. That was interesting. Actually, I think it was like maybe the first day I sat down in my office. I mean, great view, nice people. Most people say lawyers are not very nice. I like these people. When I sat down in the office and I looked out at this terrific view, I was in Philadelphia. Eagles won. I was loving that. And I knew that like this wasn't gonna last too long. Like my heart was so not into it.
Why? What did you feel?
I had a manager a couple of years before that, and he said to me, you're gonna have to look yourself in the mirror every single day, and you can only lie to yourself for so long. And I tried to convince myself that I just wanted the security and the safety of retiring well, and just punching in the clock. I could do this, and that's one of those lessons of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And going to law school is something that I could do, but I shouldn't have gone to law school. I mean,
was it pressure from your family, or
no? I just given up. I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I would look at things. I was doing the exploration of a fulfillment from the external side. I mean, I was no better than a mercenary reading Soldier of Fortune magazine, looking for a new war to fight in because it sounds exciting. A human resource person would write a job description and it sounded good enough, I would apply for it. And I thought that, this sort of, I'm looking for this adventure that takes me around the world in some jet-setting sort of experience. And the one thing I never asked myself is like, what do I really like to do? And so that's what I did. I started to pay attention to when I had ideas that I wanted to actually explore. And, after a while, that's where it arrived. I'd done I did like the cleanse for like 3 months, and then was going to Kundalini yoga sadhanas, which is like 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday for 3 hours. And
you were searching.
Yeah, I was searching. And when I came to the conclusion that I was just gonna have to be happy with my little old life, that's when I started to take my little life a little bit more seriously. And so now we're at a point where I'm done with the cleanse, and I was like, I'm about to have like a cocktail. First one in months. So I wanted to make something special because I had some friends coming over, and it was terrible the first time, but it caught my imagination. And I think within like a month I'd had the final original rendition of Jin+Ja together in my kitchen. And
were you still working as a lawyer at this point?
Yeah, I was still working. That was 2009. But it was the beginning of me taking something seriously and not looking at all right, it's just so overwhelming. There's so much I have to do. It's just, we'll just put one foot in front of the next. And, I started staying in at night on like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and just poking on the internet and saying, yeah, that's the kind of bottle I want. Yeah, I'm gonna put wax on the bottle, and I'm gonna do this and do that. And then I had this like terrible little Yahoo store. It's like when Yahoo had a store, so I had in a picture I just took with my phone. It was like pre-iPhone.
Yeah.
No, actually, yeah, this was before I had an iPhone. So it was a bad picture, and I set up a Facebook like page or like a fan page, and didn't even have a website at the time. And I put it into its first store, and I think it was like March of 2010.
How did you get to your first store?
It was right on the corner. It was a Korean grocer, and the manager loved the product, and she actually bought a bunch of it from me, and she said, bring me another little sample and I'll give it to the owner. So he said, we can stock it in the store. So that's how it started. That's where I got my first dollar making Jin+Ja. I actually wrote the story out on our website. It surprised me that people read this like long little novel that I have, but it's
I think that's good, because we're in a generation now of story selling, right? How can a guy in his kitchen compete with big beverage companies? You can, because you have a story, and you're doing something different, and that's, I think we're going to that more and more in this world. People are more, not all, but a lot of people interested in the story. Who's behind? Why do I drink this? Who's behind this? And why, And when you get, like me personally, I love that. I want to support people that do something that is out of the ordinary. And why do I have to buy everything from the big conglomerates when I can get something from a person that actually had an idea, he was fed up with his job, wanted something good, and created something really good and delicious. So that's a cool thing. So you got your first store. Yeah. What happened after that? So
after I got my first store is where I really started to understand that that it was people besides my friends that were enjoying this. Yeah. Because I'd moved to the neighborhood maybe a year before, but I didn't know many people. But as I'm bumping into people at little festivals,
this is in Philly.
Yeah, in Philadelphia. Yeah. The word would get around, and the guy that makes this stuff is here, and people would walk up to me and say, I love your stuff. I'm the reason that you're in business. I got all these little bottles lined up on my fireplace. Yeah, we haven't put flowers in it, blah, blah. And, that's when it actually hit me that, like, I'm thinking that it was my friends that were buying all of the product every single week because it was selling out. Yeah. And I would sell them 40 bottles at a time. Like, it was totally like a little home shop.
Yeah.
Like everything was homemade, from like the labels and punching holes in them, and everything was, it was all done by hand.
But isn't that like pure? That's so cool,
It totally is.
It's so hardcore and so cool, and like sitting here today, like so many years later, you're in Ralph's, you're in Whole Foods. Like, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that was it was interesting because I felt like the guy who made the donuts, time to make the donuts, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I've got to make the juice. I can't grow the company. I'm making the juice all the time. So, so it was interesting. There was a period of time between, I'd say, June and August that I took it off of the shelves because I was like, I don't know. This is unsustainable. Like,
you were still working?
Yeah. But it was more so these bottles were 4-ounce bottles, and I'm having to fill 4-ounce bottles, like 44-ounce bottles. I was like, all right, I'll put it into a bigger bottle format. That's how I'll do it. And from there, I started to approach the specialty grocery stores in Philadelphia. And, at first they would take 6 bottles on consignment. Yeah. And then they started buying 6 bottles, then they started buying cases, and then they started buying multiple cases. And, I found a food incubator that actually had licenses to make this stuff legally in New Jersey. So that's where things really started to pick up, because now that I could make larger volumes, and by no means we're talking huge volumes, we're talking 60 cases, per production run, where now, we do between 2,000 to 5,000 cases per production run. So we're talking little, like little as in I was buying all the raw materials, putting them in the back of my truck, taking it to the production facility, helping to produce it, then putting all the finished product back in my truck, taking it back to Philadelphia to put into a little storage that that some friends were like letting me use.
Look at that smile. You know,
Yeah.
isn't that what it's all about? Like being an entrepreneur, going after your dreams. Like this is probably now, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, when you look back at these moments, didn't you feel alive at that point? It was like...
Yeah, I did. I mean, what was exciting was actually making something that that wasn't there, and that if I didn't do this, it would not be there. There's still no product on the market like it, and you know, some of that is a lot of people in food and beverage. They're looking for. There's rarely that you see something that's new. You know, it's always, all right, we had coconut water, now we have non-GMO coconut water. But we're still looking at something that people are, they've already been educated and accustomed to it, you know. So these are known quantities, but this is not.
This is almost like you have to educate people.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and that's something that we had to figure out over time, how to do that the most effectively. And the timing of things, the tools that were made available to us when we were ready to make those transitions were terrific, because what we were doing it traditionally, and that just wasn't in the cards for my company. And as much as I wanted to hold on to that and say my colleagues are doing it like this and I want to be able to do it like that, I'm not even the same person as them. Like my nature would have to change in a way that the essence of who I am that made Jin+Ja possible would be altered. And while the sort of success that someone might be seeking with a company, you know, as far as I want to drive the value of it as high as I can so that it can be acquired, while that's, you know, I am interested in that, I'm more interested in the refinement of that essence that made this possible.
Yeah.
And that has led me down a very different road than most of the traditional beverage companies that were around me. Like my peers, they mostly sell in retail. And, you know, I used to be like, I want to sell more in retail because, you know, that's where you see all of these huge sales coming from, you know, like sales to Coca-Cola and Pepsi and stuff like that. But what we found is not only was our success online because we had such a better relationship with customers, but the feedback that I was getting was the sort of feedback that it actually changed the nature of my relationship with my company. You know, people use Jin+Ja you know, as a substitute for anti-inflammatories. You know, some people have reactions, they can't take pills like, you know, anti-inflammatories that have side effects. So instead, they just have to live with the discomfort of inflammation that comes in the form of arthritis, fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis. These are all inflammatory conditions. So if you're actually consuming an anti-inflammatory throughout the day, you know, there are emails where people say, you've given me my life back. I can walk without discomfort, or, you know, this pain in my elbows or my energy level. And being able to see that, it changes my relationship with the company, where I'm not so connected in my identity with it, but I see myself as a steward of something that's helpful for people.
Yeah.
So just making sure that it's possible, that it's available for them, because, you know, when people have good results, they tell all their friends about it. And that's organic growth, and I'm okay with that. Like, that's totally fine with me.
So most of your sales now is online?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that's because educating people about the product it's so much more effective online than interrupting the daily flow of their life with a billboard, with standing in a store, handing them a cup. Like, this is, you have, I mean, the deck is stacked against you, where, you know, social media, this is a place where people are looking to discover stuff. Yeah. And they figured out how to send the sort of advertisements, branding, and education that you do. They know how to send it to people who are interested in that, if you let them. And that's what we've done.
So you are people seek you for help with marketing and stuff like that. So what did you do you think that was different that made people like marketing wise really, oh, this Jin+Ja, I gotta try this?
Oh, you saying like what have I done as far as consumers saying that, or other brands that are interested?
Yeah. Because how do you get the attention of the consumer, like marketing wise? What type of ideas did you have, and how did you implement them?
Yeah. So the first one that we had was it was based on, there was this show called The Doctors, and like I said before, one of those moments where you can either step in or step around, that nexus point in your story. They were shooting an outro at a big food expo that Kroger was having in Denver, and I was doing everything that I could to actually get on this show or get some media attention, because at the time, for a small brand, that's what actually drives awareness, is doing this. And I was just pacing outside of the convention hall, trying to think of something else I could do. Like, I went back in the green room and put the product back there for Dr. Oz and Dr. Stork from The Doctors, and made sure I got in touch with their assistants while they were there, and had stuff at the press table. And then I'm sitting down now, and I look over and I see a woman doing this, and she's got a mic in her hand. I'm like, that looks like an outro. And there's a camera guy. I was like, okay, so that's the camera guy and that's the producer. And I looked at the mic and I could see the big D, and I was like, oh, that's the Doctors. That's a correspondent. They're doing an outro. And I just said, all right, well, how would you do this? And I just thought it through, and I said, wait until they're done. Once you see them starting to talk, you walk up to them, you politely interrupt them, you explain who you are, what you do, and within 10 minutes, they're following me with the whole crew into the convention hall to actually do a story right there. And the story didn't air, and I stayed in touch with the producer for the next 3 months. And at first, I'm sending him these sales pitch emails, and I'm getting no response. And then I just, it was the beginning of December, and I was like, let me just be authentic. And so I said, look, I gave you a bottle. I know you liked it. I know you're out. If you send me your address, I'll send you some more. So he sent me within 3 minutes a response. And then I said, good, now your whole staff's gonna get addicted, and then you're gonna have me on the show. And that's how the real conversation started. And the video footage that came from them having it on the show, it was almost like they were doing a total endorsement of our product for like 2 minutes. So we used that as the basis of our Facebook advertising. And what we do is, if people are interested, we take them to the site and we collect email addresses, because the value of somebody's email address is you don't have to pay to market to them again. This is someone that's interested in your product, and the person most likely to buy a new product from you is someone who's already purchased a product. So that's important. So as the email list grows and you have promotions, people are looking for the promotion. And once you let them know that it's there, they go and they purchase. And so those are the basics, but how it was explained to me is you have to make an ecosystem. And the ecosystem is you have to have your advertising, your emails, but then also your web store. And these things all work together as far as, feeding each other.
So this is a cool story. So you had to work on that for like a long time to get on Doctors, right?
Yeah, it was a 3-month process, but when it comes down to it, we're talking maybe 3 hours of time. But it's not about my schedule, and that's another thing that came out of Amazon, is things don't need to happen on my schedule. And me accepting that this is a benevolent universe that is not looking to harm me, I'm okay with whatever time schedule it's on. I don't get mad in traffic anymore. I'm like, I get there when I'm supposed to get there, and that's that. And this didn't happen now. There's one reason that I know with a certainty that it's okay that it didn't happen. Because if it was supposed to happen, it would have. And because it didn't happen, it wasn't supposed to. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because if there was something wrong with that, I'd be dead right now. And that's how you know that it's okay, that there's nothing wrong with whatever happens in your day.
I love that. When you really believe in that, that's perfect. But what would you tell people that don't believe in that? People that say, no, I create my own future. This is what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah, I'd say if that's working for you, if you like it, I love it.
Yeah.
However, anything that you can create can be taken away in the next moment, and you have absolutely no control over that. And, you know, if you take a far enough look back, you know, there's a lot of circumstances that we were situated in that really do drive our choices. No matter the essence of who you are, you know, if I actually grew up in Silicon Valley, I'd probably still have my own company. It'd be a company of a different nature, or maybe it wouldn't. I mean, if you look at the path that I took from electrical engineering in college to law, it seems like I was doing everything to avoid something that I've loved doing since I was a kid, which is, you know, creating magic, you know, like using nature and my relationship with nature and my belief in it, which it's tempered with rational thought. But I think that without an acceptance of that we all have an individual path if we choose to walk it, something that's really fulfilling, then all the rational thinking in the world is not going to get you what you really want, you know, and what you really want is a feeling. It's not tangible, you know, that thing that warms you up inside is not tangible.
I think like it's so true what you're saying. And if I look at my own life and like most of my like big life-changing moments has not been something I have planned. Yeah, I spend so much time planning, setting goals. I'm all about goals and all of this that we talked about. But now when I'm talking with you, it's like a lot of my biggest things in life, I couldn't have planned for those things, you know? Of course, I showed up for life, just like you showed up. You contacted doctors, you found another way, you know? Shit, I gotta be personal, you know? And that is something that we forget. We wanna pitch everybody all the time. Why can't you just be you? You know, sometimes it works. That's why we're sitting here.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
Yeah, that's important to know. I mean, it's important to embrace too, because I don't know. I got a really terrific friend that I went to school with, and he's a life coach, and he's like, he said something to me yesterday, or not yesterday, but a couple of days ago about not being attached to the outcome of something that he was doing, and I was like, that's healthy, because I think it's the attachment to the outcome that brings pain, you know, but not being so much attached to the outcome, but being very, very attached to who you want to be when you show up, you know, like that's important. That I think is the most important thing, is that when this moment comes, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and I'm okay with that, but I'm going to be 100% here for whatever is going to transpire, and I'm going to be fully engaged in it. If I chose to do this, I'm going to be fully engaged. And that's, I mean, it's almost, how can you compete with that?
I know. The thing is, it's so hard to actually do it in real life. I know as a martial artist, I've done it since I was 6, and the whole essence of being a true martial artist is to honestly express yourself as a human being and be detached from all outcome, because in a fight you don't know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, from where it's going to happen. So that's what you're looking for, to be absolutely free and in the moment and react on what you need to react on. But in real life it's much more difficult, because you have an idea what you want to accomplish, and how can you be totally authentic and in the moment?
Oh, and still have that perspective of, I accept whatever's going to happen.
It's because you have an idea what you want, like, and I think you're totally right. If you would say like, I'm going to show up 100%, be in the moment and work on my business and my life, I think you're going to have the best life ever. But at the end of the day, like, oh shit, my sales is going down, or I lose this person in my life, or this relationship. Like, how do you actually do it?
How do you do it? Yeah.
Yeah, because ideally it's great, but in real life as a human being,
it's hard because how much faith have we really been exposed to? You know, like the faith that it's okay because things will work out. And I don't have to know how they're going to work out. But what I do know with a certainty is whatever this surprise was, whether it was positive or negative, it was meant to be a post on the road to tell me, am I going in the right direction? Because one thing about things not working out is it's pretty obvious. If it was supposed to work out, it would have. You know, you do your best and it doesn't work out. What's the takeaway? This was not meant to work out. And there's nothing to take personally, because what is really going to bring you fulfillment, you should be relieved because this obviously was not. Yeah. And within a matter of months, wherever you are at on your journey from that, you'll realize no, now I'm not emotionally involved in that thing and can take a step back and look at it objectively and see that there were a lot of things that were not resonating with who I am. I mean, even this thing with, I wanted when I first started Jin+Ja to have like a company where it was a mail order subscription, but the technology just wasn't right. But not only wasn't it right, because I could have driven forward and plowed down and had a programmer set all this stuff up, even in an uncertain regulatory environment, and done it, but the pieces that I needed, I didn't even have until 2015. Like, none of this was even ready in a way that I would be able to really attack it and be successful. But I don't know, the 6 years spent learning about all of these different ways not to do it, it gives me an appreciation of what I'm doing now. And it also gives me a confidence when I talk to, other business owners that have got consumer packaged goods. And I tell them, I'm like, look, I know what you've been through. I know how you feel about each one of these parts. And yes, things are going okay, but it's costing you a lot. It's costing you a lot personally. This is not how you envisioned your life. But here's what I did. It's radically different, but given the environment that we're in, you're on the Titanic, it's sinking. If your company is working and you're on the Titanic, that means you're in the second class or the first class, which means you have the most time in order to devise your plan to get off of this sinking ship. And what that means is you have to do something very radical, because being on an ocean liner cruiser versus being in a sailboat, there's a very different experience. And it's going to take a different perspective, an orientation shift. But I've actually done it already. Yeah. And I've said, I have a model. I'm like, look, here's your homework. Do this, 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 and this, and then come back to me when you're done. And these are the pieces that you need in order to make this successful. Because one thing that most people don't even realize that are in consumer packaging goods that are not selling online is you want a relationship with your customer that goes beyond them purchasing your product. You want to be able to hear from them. You want to be able to talk to them. You want them to be able to be aware of when you have new products, new ways to use it coming out. And if you're relying upon retail outlets for your distribution points, there's a disconnect as far as you don't know how much and who's actually purchasing your product. So with that, how can you have any sort of meaningful engagement with them? You don't even know where they are. So, but what it does also is, because I had to do something new, there's a story to tell, and there's a story to tell that can help people. And I think there's room for us all to be successful. I think there's enough people in this world that want something special, that if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. If you have something that's in your heart that you want to bring to life, bring it to life without expectations, because it might grow this high, it might grow this high. But if you don't do it, we won't have it. And in a garden, there's all sorts of stuff. And it doesn't all have to be oak trees or, silkworms or whatever. It's just, the variety is what actually provides that real richness to life. And I think that we should all participate in that.
No, I love that, and I think it's so great, and to have that courage and be like, what I really like with you, you feel comfortable in whatever's gonna happen, that it's okay. And I think that's a cool thing. It doesn't mean that you're not preparing to be successful or doing things really good, but you're okay that it might not end up exactly as you planned, but it will end up maybe something better, maybe something
fine.
different.
Yeah.
And as long as we're, I think, as long as we're healthy and we can walk this planet,
Right.
we're winners. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
So everything
Yeah.
else, but I mean, when you're in it, it's much harder to, like when you're fed up with your life, it's much harder.
Losing perspective. Yeah.
You lose perspective. So let's, like, to create this business that you have right now, what has been the hardest part? What did you have to give up to create this?
I think that I think the most significant difference is with owning a business, you look in the mirror and you can comfortably take responsibility for most of the things that happen, good or bad. And the things that are blocking you from growing, those are the tough places, those are the dark corners that whatever that thing is that you're feeling blocked about, it's connected with something from your past that you didn't have to deal with. There's a reason that people go back to sleep. I think most people wake up early. I think they do. I think that most people, when they first wake up, they go back to sleep and wait for that alarm to tell them to get up. And it's that time between when you first wake up and when that alarm goes off that your stuff wants to come up and get dealt with and resolved. And if you don't have the tools to do that, then it's very difficult to move forward. And for years I didn't, and had found some way, pushing through and being unprepared to push through with those sort of challenges. That was the hardest part. That, I think, I think it was there that I could really appreciate the use of anger. People are like, oh, don't get angry. It's a natural emotion, but one thing I found about anger is it gets shit done, even when you're not okay inside. And if you can actually look at your emotional spectrum and identify just how valuable every aspect is, because it's something that can either motivate you or provide the guidance to be in a healthy place. Every emotion in the spectrum we were given it for a reason. It's just about depersonalizing it. You don't get angry at somebody else. You get angry at your dissatisfaction and use that energy to do something about it.
Like pain, suffering, anger is a driving force.
Yeah.
And if you look at a lot of people that have excelled in their life, it starts with pain. They want something different. And to get that, they need to suffer, because if you want to become a world medalist or having a great business, you have to suffer in some means. And when you have pain and you suffer, you're sometimes very angry as well.
right.
So
great motivator, right?
Yeah, so
if pointed in the right direction.
There are motivators, I think, as long as you can handle it in the right way. One thing that I struggle with now, I'm evolving a lot. I've evolved as a martial artist, but doing this show, I meet a lot of people, and I learn. Like, this is unbelievable to sit and learn from a guy like you. And I try to think a lot about these things and try to evolve it and put it into action in my own life. But sometimes what I feel when you become spiritual or when you become motivated in a certain way, you feel like you're evolving, and people that you had in your life before, they don't fit your how you did you have to leave any people behind?
God, that's a good question.
Not maybe leave behind, but I mean, it feels like sometimes you evolve in a certain way, and like you're not the people that you
It changes, definitely.
You change and you feel like maybe someone else is not changing and you want to do something else with your life, and that's changed the perspective of everything.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, conversations change, you know. Once you go into those dark places, you start to develop a relationship with those places, and that's where you're interested in going. You know, you're interested in looking at how this peer or this colleague shows up, and you say, "How you doing?" They're like, "Oh, I'm fine." You're like, "No, you're not fine. I see something going on here. Like, what's going on here?" And you know, there are some people that are really looking for that. They're looking for a relationship that allows them to be vulnerable and to create the space where they can get it out and look at it, you know, and just have somebody who's going to bear witness, and somebody letting them know that this is okay and it's actually important for us to talk about. And if that's something that you're not comfortable with, that's totally cool, but now you know. Now you know what's probably going to happen when we actually have time like this together, because if I care about you, it's important to me. And you know, if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable, but I'm okay with that. And it's almost like a self-selecting process where they're still in your life, but you know, they're not engaging with you on the activities that you're starting to do now. They start, I mean, I think people sense when there is a shift inside of you, and I don't think so much leaving them behind, but it does. What I have found recently is it gives people, it gives them something to look to. So you'll start to get weird questions, and they're trying to get the questions answered for them to prepare themselves to even start their exploration and start looking in those places.
They get curious. They get curious in their own.
Yeah,
like,
they're like,
see
how
you're
are
evolving.
you? Yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of people would always ask me when I got back from the Amazon is, how are you so not worried? And I was like, if something is wrong, I'll be dead. Otherwise, this is just life happening. And I found that, like, after that, I did less, because it's no longer about, let me throw a whole bunch of stuff on the wall and try every single one of these things and keep myself busy. It's like, when something actually feels right, that's when I'll actually look into it. And then we'll see where it goes and how far it goes and what I learned from it. But other than that, there's more to life than just like taking this one facet and just saying, I'm gonna take up all the other time that it may not even be appropriate. Like if it's almost like if you're in New Jersey and you try and plant seeds for corn in December, it's not time. But you know, I mean, you know it's time. You know almost to the moment when it's time to do something. When it's like, this is time to actually address this. All the pieces have coalesced. And I don't even know where they're at until I start. But I'm like, there we go. But, you know, when I prepare for a speech, it's usually like 20 minutes before I have to speak that it all comes together. I mean, I'll start planning like 2 weeks before, but whatever I wrote down 2 weeks before, that's not working for me 20 minutes before.
I think it's to come to that level in your life, to be okay how everything is, and to be strong and know when to push and when to relax. I think you'll come very far in your life, because some people, if they see you, say, no, this is just a slacker. It's not about that. It's a guy that worked really hard in his life. He had a lot of things that he thought about. He actually explored them and evolved. And now you're here, you're calm, and you're strong in yourself. And I think that is something that we're all looking for. So props to you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That slacker comment is funny, because sometimes I actually think about that. I'm like, damn, you know, for somebody who doesn't really know me, they'd be like, this guy he doesn't do anything.
Yeah. People say that to me too. The only thing you do is drink coffee. And I love drinking coffee.
I mean, you know, like, we got our thing.
I enjoy life, but I work really hard too. And like it's not all about working hard. You have to do the right things too, right? And I noticed that. And one thing that I take away with talking with you today is being more comfortable in not knowing, and don't sometimes not try to push too hard. I think it's good to have goals. I even wrote a book about it. I will give it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I think goals and dreams are very important, but sometimes maybe you should be open because what happens on the way, because you evolve as a person too.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. So I have just 2 more questions.
Sure.
And then we get out. It's a beautiful day. And are you going to the beach today? Or?
Oh, actually, I'm going for a walk with a friend. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. To get some exercise.
Venice is beautiful. So 2 more questions. Imagine you're 87 years old. You're sitting in a rocking chair somewhere, who knows, at a beach. You're looking over the beach or in a mountain or your favorite spot, and you're thinking about your life. You're thinking, what happened in my life, and what do you want to have happen to be proud of yourself? Is there anything special you would like to see when you contemplate about your life?
Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom that I've discovered, that has modern day implications, and just as important as passing on my genetic wisdom in the form of a child, I think that some of the things that I've learned, if that was something that was embraced and adopted by younger generations, just as cornerstones, such as, how does it change your life when you actually stop worrying? Stuff's gonna happen. Stuff's gonna happen that is gonna be disappointing. But if you know with a certainty that it's okay, imagine what that looks like. Imagine what that looks like when you can actually express your emotions in a healthy way. Like depression, what is depression? It's the inability to express your emotions in a healthy way. These sort of things that they're not really engaged in on a level where you can make a difference. Like intellectualizing this stuff, it's almost like saying, I can tell you everything about this cup, from the size, the weight, the shape, the diameter, and everything else. This is doing nothing to get the water into my mouth. That's experiential, and that's something that if you actually embrace some of these things that I've learned, it makes it so that, we know in society it's only 20% of the workforce that's actually doing 80% of the work. We know that. If you ever go into an office, you're looking at a good 2 hours worth of work out of most people that's actually effective work. Everything else is, I'm putting in my 8 hours. That's, I've worked there. I know it. Come on, right? Really, there's a reason why people don't check the history of somebody's browser. They know, but they're just happy for them to be there. But us being able to embrace these sort of things, this isn't about rinse and repeat, but it's about, look, let's think this one through. I don't have any problem with spending 20 hours to figure out how to do a job that takes 80 hours in 10. I prefer to do that. I would prefer to sit around. I was engaged in my fiance, and my fiance had to stay home for the summer. She was a vascular surgeon, so she's home for the summer while her license is coming through. And she sees me laying down on the couch, and she's like, I thought you were working. And I have my eyes closed, and I'm like, I am.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking. And this is important. Yeah. It's important to be able to at least envision what's possible from certain actions you take. Instead of this thing being goal-oriented, this is the goal, and here's what I'm going to do. What if I do this today? Where could it lead? And then you can actually go down the list and say, the thing that has the most audacious, crazy ending, I'm at least going to put some time into that one, because what you want is, you plant a couple of seeds, but you also want that neutron bomb seed that when it comes, you're like, oh boy, we weren't expecting that. You know, we're going to have to go get some more money because we just ran out of stock because that idea worked too well. And you're just, but you know, that's eventually what we got to is.
That's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, and that became like a saying for the company, which is, what's the worst that can happen? I love that saying. You know, no matter how crazy the idea, you're like, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah. We're right back to where we started from? Oh, no. God forbid.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great stuff. And the last question I'm going to ask you before we head out into the sun, Reuben, is something that I ask all my guests.
Sure.
And we're all about sharing life journeys, experiences, but what I want people to do after listening to this is to take action in their own life, whatever it is, to get a little bit closer to what they want. So what would be your best tool for actually get started working on their dreams right now?
Yeah, that's I think the thing that I did when I first started is probably the most healthy and realistic thing that I could do, which was I saw the mountain, you know, like this is how good it can get, or this is how good I think it can get, or this is the goal, be as big as Coca-Cola. And it's like, that's fine. I mean, my goal has changed over time, but instead of studying Coca-Cola and saying, here's all the infrastructure they have, and here's how they did their branding, and here's how they did their thing, I said, look, what's the next thing that I need to do? Let me do as many of the next things that I need to do until I come to a point where I can't do anything further unless I have some outside intervention. And what I found is, at every point in the growth, in the early days, I'm talking the early days, like the first 4 years, once I actually did those to-do things, you know, this stuff would show up, you know, like once I got to the point of Whole Foods said, make these changes and do this and we'll put it in the stores or whatever. Once I got to that point and started to put a little bit more organization to my business, I stumbled upon my first investor from an invite to a totally unrelated event. And now we were at a point where it was time to capitalize the company and take things to the next level. This has nothing to do with me cold calling people or doing this and that. This is like, you walk your path, and the more authentic you can walk it with the hands and feet and the abilities that you have, the things that you need will come when they need to come. And you know how you know they weren't supposed to come? Because they didn't, you know, and that's fine. And you're like, obviously, the time has not ripened for this thing, so what can I do today? And that becomes the point of, you know what, here's how I know it was a good day. All the things that I could have done to actually move the ball forward, I did. And I didn't worry about what I didn't do, because there's tomorrow. But show up and get that done, and then these little surprises, these little, what do they call them, Easter eggs? Yeah. They have to show up. Yeah. They have to show up in some form or the other. It may be in a direction that you're like, I was not expecting this, but you know, we're adaptable, and it's nothing like, you know, arriving somewhere where you're like, this is the coolest ever. Like, I didn't even know this existed, you know? And that's the nature of not looking at the mountain, but looking right in front of your feet. You've already set your path. Just make sure that you're not doing too many stumbles, which is pay attention to today.
I love that. So I want to thank you, Reuben, so much for being here today. It means a lot to me.
My pleasure coming on, Peter. I enjoyed this.
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot, and it was a lot of conversations that I didn't expect today. But it became actually more authentic and more real. And I want to share this because this is what life is about. And I think if you can have the outlook on life that you're having now and be authentic with that, I think you're going to have a great life. So thank you for that. And
my pleasure.
I want to thank everybody for listening in today. And also thank you to panos.com for sponsoring us. So talk to you soon, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.